How you doing, Debbie?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you? You look great.
Thank you. Well, we were just discussing that I've been wearing my wig for the whole last year, because, somebody wrote me the other day on Twitter, it's hypocritical, you went on people with no hair and, I saw you the other day and you had a wig on. And I said, you know what? I'm a cancer patient and now a survivor, but I'm also Joan London, the journalist, and I still have the right to still keep working, and being on air without hair would be distracting. So can't I be both? I mean, I am
Yeah.
not just defined as the cancer patient.
No, that's
Of
right.
course, my daughters always say, "Don't engage these people." Like,
Exactly.
because
They
I can't
daughters
help.
sound like my staff.
I know, I know.
You're like my daughter.
My daughter works with me. So I have one daughter, Maimah. I don't know if you know this because I know you now have your daughter as young as she is already in the employ and working.
She works for me part time.
Absolutely. I have a daughter who's 31, who is the vice president of my company, Joan London Productions, and
Oh, really?
interfaces with all the corporations that I do business with, and travels all over the country with me. And she has a little girl, Parker, who's 8 months old. And then I have another daughter who's 27, who lives out in LA, and she is now the producer of Alive with Joan, the new online TV channel that we have that is dedicated to breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
So it's really amazing.
We're doing that with you tomorrow, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely. And Sarah, who's the producer of the channel, will be there with me in Washington
Oh,
tomorrow.
great.
But it's wonderful when you have your daughters buy in full-fledged into your mission, into your passion to try to help other women. And I have that. I'm very fortunate that I have that.
That is amazing. That's
That's a
so wonderful.
blessing.
And I'm delighted to be a part of tomorrow, of Young Women's Breast Health Day on the Hill there in Washington. This
Yeah.
is so cool. Mamie, you want to start us off and just tell us how this came about?
Well, I was blessed to have gone to an event that I wasn't supposed to be going to because I didn't have daycare, but I went because, God leads me and talks to me and I just do things. And I had taken my daughter to school early because I wanted to meet Debbie. And I was driving there feeling very guilty as a mom, leaving her at daycare early because I was following my passion and following my God. I'm like, well, I should be a good mom and stay home with her, but I'm going here for a reason. This woman, there's some reason why I feel compelled to meet her. And I met Debbie, and when I walked in, she was talking about being a mother and a wife and having to be in D.C. and work and how she missed her kids, but how she felt compelled to lead and make the world better for them. And I just started crying. And so after that, I just was like, okay, God, you gave me the answer. This is it. So I went to tell her thank you. And then she ended up asking me what I did. And I'm like, no, you're amazing. You just gave me my why for it. And I never told you this before, by the way. But and then she said, what do you do? And I told her, and she's like, oh my God, we need to talk. And so I went to her office, and she was amazing because Debbie's really busy, but she asked me to meet with her. And at the time, I worked full time, and she waited for me in her office till I came with my daughter, and I came with slides to tell her what I did. And she's like, put those slides down, girl. And she's like, let's just talk. And I'm like, okay. And she told me about her breast cancer journey and how she once again sacrificed for a greater, another good, not greater, but just something else. And she wanted to make a difference, and she asked me what I was doing and what I would suggest, and I told her what my ministry and my mission was for women who are under the age of 40, 45, and how this journey makes us warriors, and we have to give back, and there's a demographic that is in such need of resources, funding, and she's like, we just sat there and cried, and she said, I'm going to do this thing. I'll make a bill, I create something that's going to be nationwide. And I said, you're going to pass a bill? You can't do that. She goes, yes, I can. That's how the early act, she says, I do things like that. And that's how the early act started.
And Joan, I met with Maimah even before yeah, that's right. That's in my job description, passing bills. I can do that.
I can do it.
But I actually told Maimah before I shared publicly my experience with breast cancer with anyone. We were preparing to share it as I was completing, my the last of my surgeries. And in my faith tradition, it's called Basheret. When something happens and it was meant to be, that's what Basheret is. And really, Maimah's absolutely right. Our coming together just at the right moment was absolutely meant to be. And I was looking for the way, what is the niche that I can fill as a survivor when I share my own experience, and what can I do to be that special advocate that takes on something that has that needs doing, that had not yet been tackled. And Maimah brought it to me. Maimah, you've not shared that story with me before, but I remember that encounter and our conversation like it was yesterday, because my staff knew, the couple of staff that knew, we were looking for, what is it? Because I didn't want to just raise my hand and say, I'm for more funding for research. I didn't want to just have my role be me too. And then suddenly you were there telling your story, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. So you are such an incredible leader, and someone who, thankfully, the initiative that you were willing to take really was the catalyst to making this happen.
Well, more and more young women are now being diagnosed with breast cancer, and there are a lot of varying reasons why that's happening. But that means we need more awareness. We need better ways to find and screen these young women who are at risk. But I think that I listened to the U.S. task force, and I'm so scared right now that we're going to take actions in this country that might actually do the opposite.
And Maimah and I haven't even had a chance to talk about this in depth yet, but it's a here we go again moment when the United States Preventative Services Task Force, which unfortunately in matters like these are given great deference in how they rate the public health needs of patients across the country. And once again, we fought a battle in 2009, and now we're having to fight it again, because they've recommended that they lower the priority. The way they rank things is in letter order. So they want to drop to a C or a D the recommendation that women get a mammogram between 40 and 50, and say, you only have to consult your doctor and have a mammogram in dealing with your own unique needs. And for us, as you mentioned, Joan, we're not going in the right direction when it comes to younger women.
I think they're very reckless. Their approach is broad brush and very reckless. There are women who are getting diagnosed under 45 who have more aggressive breast cancers, as you know, and with that, if they're being diagnosed at later stages, they have a higher mortality rate. And with my tumor and so many women that I've encountered through my work the past 9 years, the difference between life and death could be about 6 months, because tumors could double in size. So if you're telling a woman under 45 or 40, you won't get screening, the insurance company won't cover it, imagine how much higher the numbers of women that are going to die from this disease will be over the next 5 to 10 years. So the timing of this Hill Day was so funny. It was so unplanned. It was supposed to happen in October. But again, Basheret, how fate works and how God works, it ended up being in June. And so we're going to just do all we can to ensure the task force recommendations are not, they don't go further than being just recommendations. They can't become, solidified.
The U.S. the task force. Am I right? Are there any oncologists or breast cancer surgeons or radiologists, like clinicians that see patients all the time? Are there any of those on this task force?
No, that's been a criticism that we've had for a long time. There are no cancer experts sitting on the USPSTF. None. So it's they're public health experts, but what we've battled with both these so-called experts on this task force, as well as unfortunately with some cancer organizations, is they say that the percentage of young women out of all the breast cancers is too small to warrant the balance that they strike between false positives and the downside risk of a false positive, and the benefit to a woman who is between 40 and 50, and whether or not she's actually going to detect a cancer as a result of having a mammogram. And
So
what we say.
So how many women actually have to die to make that, to tip that balance and make it worthwhile?
Exactly. That's our point.
That's our point.
Who do you write off?
What if I hadn't gotten screening? What if Debbie hadn't gotten screening? What about our children, our grandchildren? We too have the right to live, and you can't say because we're in the minority that we don't deserve the right to get screening. These are people who are taxpayers, they're citizens, and they deserve the right to get the right screening. So it upsets me a great deal because, the phone rings here every single day, all the time, and out of 10 calls, there are at least 3 or 4 women who are diagnosed too late. So if the U.S. Task Force has its way, it's just, I can't imagine what would happen.
And ever since I've gone public with my journey, and particularly since I started, the online TV channel, I am hearing from women who write in and day out saying, I'm 32, I'm 37, I'm whatever I am, and I've been told I have dense breasts, and I can't get insurance to pay for an ultrasound, and I can't afford it. What do I do? I feel the lump. I know I have it. It's tragic.
I know. And see, that's another troubling recommendation made at the same time as the mammogram recommendation by the USPSTF. They also are saying that dense breasts, women with dense breasts may not benefit from earlier screenings through mammography.
And I think I told you this, Debbie, that I was never recommended by a doctor to get that extra screening, that ultrasound. It was just by a fluke that I was sent as a journalist to do an interview with Dr. Susan Love, breast cancer expert, and she said to me, you should be getting the ultrasound if you know you have dense breasts. The fact is that 45% of American women have dense breast tissue. Don't they deserve to be protected by our government?
Right. Absolutely. We know, and I've said this to these experts, we know that there are younger women who, if this recommendation goes through, they will either decide, they'll take the advice that they think they hear, and they won't have a mammogram until they're 50, or maybe later. And if they don't have one, there's definitely going to be breast cancer that it doesn't get detected, or that once it's detected, it's diagnosed, as Maimah said, at a later stage. And there will definitely be women who don't have to die that will, because their recommendation is that it's on a case-by-case basis that women between 40 and 50 should get a mammogram.
What do we do? The three of us here, we look at these statistics. Obviously, mortality rates are going to go up.
And let's talk statistics. 25,000 women under 45 every year are diagnosed with breast cancer. 25,000.
And of that number, about 10% die because they're misdiagnosed or they're diagnosed too late. And so, one of the things, that's why we began having the Hill Day. We had to bring people together on the Hill, bring leaders, members of Congress, coalitions, other foundations, young women to realize they have a voice. A lot of the women that we brought on the Hill the first time didn't understand how important their voices were. I didn't understand how important my voice was. You asked me before we began the hangout, how did you do this? I just kept talking. And every time I lost a friend or something happened, I just had to ask questions and ask why and who's doing something. So if we all speak together enough times and loudly enough, if we don't go away, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
And that's what the Early Act was all about. The Early Act was what the Early Act was all about, because, Joan, you asked, what can we do? The Early Act created a national education and awareness campaign targeted specifically at young women so that they could focus on their breast health, so that they would know what was normal for them, so they'd know when something felt different, and so that young women who were at risk but didn't know it, like I was, because I'm an Ashkenazi Jewish woman, and I didn't find out that I was actually BRCA2 positive, which is a genetic mutation that gave me a much higher chance of getting breast cancer or having a recurrence. But I didn't find that out, even though I had passed legislation as a state legislator, had been a breast cancer advocate as a lawmaker. I did not know that I was at risk until after I was diagnosed with breast cancer, or that Ashkenazi Jewish women could be at risk. So if I didn't know, as someone who knew a lot about it, imagine how many women don't know. So the Early Act does that, and we also, and this was an important part of the bill that Maimah brought us, and as well as Be Bright Pink and some of the other organizations, healthcare providers are often dismissive, as Maimah's doctor was, of young women who come in and present with a problem. They're concerned, they're not sure what this lump was, and they get sent home. And so the legislation, which is now law and reauthorized, also created an education campaign targeted at healthcare providers to be watchful for certain young women at risk. And Maimah sits on the Early Act Advisory Board at the CDC and has been really, has brought up an important perspective as a young survivor. So we can make sure that we can craft those messages and target young women and reach them.
Well, like Maimah, I've kind of found a calling last year myself. Who would have ever thought that we would have just be launching a TV channel about breast cancer? And you know what? I feel like you, Debbie. I'm the person who was doing all the interviews, who talked to doctors all the time. If I didn't know this, then how many other women out there? And as I've gone public, I think the thing that was the most stunning was how stunned women across the country were to hear that I could walk in and get a mammogram and then walk out and actually have cancer. Because we all think of it as that, the buck stops at the mammogram. And we all read magazines, and I remember seeing a magazine cover a few months ago that said, "Should I say no to my mammo?" So with all of that going on, is whatever we can do. Like I have a pulpit. We all know that after 20 years of being in everybody's living room and bedroom. I will use it however you guys guide me, because I'm just learning this. I've been to Washington now twice, but I always went as a journalist. These last 2 times I've gone as an advocate, and I'm learning the ropes. And when I went and saw, you'll appreciate this, Chris Murphy and Blumenthal, and they both said that they'd signed the Breast Density Act. Then I saw them at Race for the Cure, and Dr. Nancy Capello came over to me and whispered in my ear, "They haven't signed yet." So I went over and accosted them and said, "Hey, you guys said you were going to sign, you didn't sign." And they went back and signed the next week. So I came home and said, "Okay, you just have to keep being persistent. But whatever I can do to help, I'm here. And if there are certain points you want me to make tomorrow to the crowd that is there, I'm Joan L. at joanlondon.com, and I'm writing out my words. If anything that you want to make sure that I convey to the people who are in that audience, as I understand it, they are people from representatives and senators' offices, so they'll take the information back to the representatives. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. But I want to do my part the best I can do it.
Thank you.
One of the things the Early Act talks about that I love, it says it's very simple. It says to learn, to know, to act, and to speak up. And it's very simple language that can be understood by a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 25-year-old. And it's just that simple. Learn your body intimately. Know your family history. Know your own history. Know the risk factors. Know your environmental cause. Just know what's around you, and then act if you have to, like you're doing, like we did, and then keep speaking up. And those are always my key, 4 points. Learn as much as I can. Know my body again, and act and speak up, and don't stop talking. Keep asking questions. Keep challenging people. Challenging myself to think more, be more critical. And that's what the gist of it is.
Exactly. And we're also going to talk tomorrow about our survivorship legislation, because the next step of this is there have not been enough studies or enough research dollars targeted at younger survivors. Because, most women get breast cancer in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and you're in a different situation in life at that stage than you are when you're diagnosed in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. And so making sure that NIH and the and NCCI pays attention and directs some of their resources towards that AYA, the adolescent and young adult breast cancer, is really important.
I would love to be able to see that legislation, and
we're happy to share it with you.
Yes, I'd like to see that. And so that was going to be my next question is what is the next step? Because I see all these different bills that are, somebody has me working on medical debt relief, another person has me working on breast density. But my question was, the Early Act got enacted. Now what's the next step to try to protect, since we see the numbers going up of who's being diagnosed under 45?
Well, what's really interesting as well, people are getting diagnosed, under 45 and having longer lifespan, because most of these women do survive breast cancer. So that this new bill is about, survivorship and the quality of life after breast cancer. How do you deal with, oh my God, because you're hit by this train, then you're told, okay, you're done now, you're well. Well, then go out and live. What does that look like? The hair, can I still have children?
Yeah.
When I'm dating, when do I tell a guy I have, a one boob or a quarter boob or none? And what about your, bills and children? Your children are traumatized, your husband or boyfriend. So all these things you have to deal with, fertility preservation. And, for some women who are maybe, gay, lesbians, there's other things they have to deal with, getting other health care. And so this whole bill is going to this other part is going to deal with life after breast cancer ends. Just things like one of the programs we offer at Tigerlily is giving women access to massages, to life coaches, to trainers, so they can kind of de-stress, and manage their life after breast cancer is over. So I'm looking forward to the next step and going forward.
And Maimah, I'd like you to hook up with me as well at joanl@joanlondon.com, and it's LUNDEN, so we can all keep an eye on. I've learned one thing through this last year, and that is never to underestimate the power of the individual voice.
Yes.
And action. Collectively, we can really raise hell.
One person can make a difference, and together we can raise a whole lot of hell.
I love raising hell.
We're looking forward to you joining us as the Hellraiser Caucus.
All right, you got it.
Thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll see you tomorrow. I look forward to it.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks. You're very welcome.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Joan.
Bye.